Democracy and the rule of law is a relatively recent and always fragile enterprise. Dictators and autocrats have figured out that they can use the rule of law to their advantage.
Hello, David. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you today. And I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the trends in the legal market. And there are three things that I would like to comment with you. The first one, of course, is AI. The second one is the rule of law. And the third one is legal education. So starting with the most obvious one, AI. How do you think AI will impact two different things? One is the demand, the need, the request for legal services. Will we see in the future higher or less need for legal services? And the second one is, who will deliver these legal services? Will the law firms, the general counsels, the lawyers? What is your opinion on this?
So thank you, Soledad. It's a great pleasure to be here. And if I knew the answers to those questions, I would be extremely rich. The fact of the matter is, no one really knows the answer to those questions. We are in the Stone Age of what, by almost any definition, is going to be the most transformative technological revolution, I don't know, since electricity or something like that, and maybe even more. In the short term, generative AI and these new technologies will be, roughly speaking, a welfare act for lawyers, which means every single aspect of these new technologies will be litigated, right? Intellectual property, who owns the content, who's responsible for hallucinations. It will be regulated at multiple levels and conflicting levels in which only lawyers will be able to figure out and help clients to sort through. So this is going to create an explosion of demand around legal services relating to these new technologies. That's a kind of short-term, first-order effect. Second, people are already and will increasingly look for ways to use these new technologies to both supplement and replace demand. That is, you will see lots of legal services providers. They've gone from a posture of banning everyone from using them to now trying to figure out how to use them to increase their efficiency, their productivity, their profitability. There is no question that, like all technologies, they will also replace the need for some human work that is currently done by human legal professionals. The kinds of tasks that, quite frankly, you never needed a law degree to do anyway, like reading documents, doing basic kinds of drafting, basic kinds of research. Who are most at risk are not junior level people, but there are mid-level partners who do not have their own book of business and who do narrow technical specialties, because ChatGPT is already very good at that, and it will only get exponentially better. Last point, who will do these services? As the provision of services moves to what can be learned from crunching large amounts of data by sophisticated and capable machines, that is not the exclusive province of people who go to law school. And therefore, we are going to see an explosion of the providers who are providing services at the intersection of law, technology, strategy, psychology, human resources. All of these things are now an increasingly contested domain with lots of potential providers.
So I guess that, as we have seen before, Every revolution, every relevant transformation of society has had as a result a demand and a request for more legal services. Uncertainty calls for more demand of legal services. Now the question with this AI revolution is, how will the legal services providers benefit from the use of this technology in order to still be the ones who provide this service?
So that's one way to look at the problem. A different way to look at the problem is, how are individuals and organizations of all kinds going to deal with increasing uncertainty, of which law is a piece, but only a piece? And so I think, just like you have seen in lots of other fields, you're going to see an explosion in what you might call do-it-yourself services, direct access, direct business-to-consumer access to services. You're likely to see big organizations wrapping legal into other products they provide. Like, you want a mortgage. Well, right now you go to a bank and then you go to a lawyer. Why is it that you might not be able to have the legal services around buying and selling real estate wrapped into products that are sold by mortgage companies or banks? Now, there's a regulatory set of questions that sits on top of that, but as we have found out over time, regulation rarely stops innovation. It may slow down the pace of it, it may divert it, when, back to your first point, there's a big demand for not only a particular service, but managing complex transactions in an increasingly complex and volatile world as quickly and efficiently as possible.
So law is not the only solution, but it's part of the solution. I believe that law should be at the center of the debate around the use of AI, the ethical use of AI, and the use of AI in the benefit of society. Lawyers, law students, and legal academics should not wait for the big tech companies to make all the decisions. They should be more at the forefront of the debate. And this drives me to the second point, which is the rule of law. What we are seeing around the world now, and what we have seen in several regions, is that the situation, the respect of the rule of law, can change in a shorter period of time than we would have thought of. And we have seen governments take over and regimes take over. We have seen decisions being made around institutions, and we have seen how fast this can have an impact in society, in the lives of citizens, in human rights. What do you think is at risk here? What do you think is the responsibility of law schools, and how far should law schools and legal academics go?
Democracy and the rule of law is a relatively recent and always fragile enterprise. Most of the world, for most of humankind, has been ruled by kings and dictators and other forms of autocrats. The difference, I think, today is that we associate autocracy with the opposite of the rule of law, that dictators don't want law. But in fact, what we have seen is that dictators and autocrats have figured out that they can use the rule of law to their advantage. So legal autocracy used to be an oxymoron. It's now something that we have seen in various places in Europe, in Latin America, and certainly the risk of it in my own country at the moment. So the rule of law is an understanding about the use of law and legal institutions, which can be put to many different purposes. As legal educators, we are used to thinking of ourselves as the first line and last important line of defense of the rule of law. And that is true. But it's also true that we have seen lawyers undermining the very rule of law that they were designed to protect. The third point is, what is the role of legal education in an environment in which law is a part, but only a part, of the complex web of large-scale trends like technology and globalization and demographic change and geopolitical instability, law schools need to be much more engaged in helping their graduates and their faculties and the society as a whole understand the complex interdependence of these large-scale forces for the preservation of democratic values and the rule of law.
So it's like there's a malpractice of the rule of law. And this takes me, David, to my last topic, which is legal education. There is a responsibility, which is also an opportunity among law schools currently, because the world needs professionals and needs graduates who are trained in the values of law, professionals who research on ethics of AI. Where do you see the opportunity as well as the challenges? The biggest one probably is the regulation of the access to the legal profession. Another one is the not always easy path to global and international legal education, the extremely regulated academic content. But still, I think this is a very important moment, and a moment where there are big opportunities for law schools to be heard out there. What is your opinion?
So I tell my students that this is both the most terrifying and the most exciting time to become a lawyer. There was a very set, well-known, long-standing understanding of what the purpose of law schools were, what we were supposed to be teaching, what our graduates were expected to do when they graduated. Almost none of that is true today. And that is scary because many of the things that we took for granted about how we were preparing our students has been destabilized, and much of what we thought was true may no longer be true, and many things we never thought about before. But it's also really exciting. There is much more of an opportunity to make your own way, to remake what the fundamental fabric of institutions we took for granted could never change are now changing before our eyes. I don't know, take remote work. You have to be in person 5 days a week, and then suddenly within an instant everybody was online. Now, the challenge for us is that law schools and the people who run them and teach them have been trained in disciplinary silos, which aren't even just about law, but your particular area in the law, private law, public law, international law. And the problems that we are increasingly being asked to be a part of solving, sociology and psychology and economics and computer science and globalization and many other things. That's a challenge for us to figure out how do we reconfigure our institutions to prepare people to live in this kind of world. Much of what we used to train them for is already well done by ChatGPT and other AI, and will be more so. We can be a part, but only a part, of what is going to be one of the most important transformations in human history.
Well, let's hope for a positive future for law schools in the benefit of society, for a successful establishment of the rule of law worldwide, and let's hope for legal services providers to know how to use AI in the benefit of their clients, in the benefit of efficiency, and in the benefit of society. Thank you very much, David. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.